1. Letting go to grow, a Stoic perspective on relationships that hold you back. Have you ever felt like you're standing still in life, stuck in a place where growth seems just out of reach? Not because you're not trying, but because someone close to you is quietly holding you back. It's a situation many of us face, staying in a relationship or friendship not out of love or purpose, but out of habit, fear, or guilt. The Stoics had a powerful way of seeing this. They believed that in order to live a meaningful, fulfilling life, we must align ourselves with virtue, reason, and progress. And sometimes, that means having the courage to walk away from relationships that no longer support our growth. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, emphasized the importance of personal development. He believed that life should be a constant journey of improvement. If you find yourself surrounded by people who discourage that journey, whether subtly through negativity or openly through criticism and resistance, you owe it to yourself to pause and reflect. Are these people truly helping you flourish? Or are they anchoring you to an older version of yourself that you've outgrown? Growth requires space, emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical. It requires an environment that supports curiosity, challenges you constructively, and allows you to stretch your boundaries. A healthy relationship doesn't have to be perfect, but it should feel like a source of energy, not exhaustion. Your relationships should include people who push you to be better, not people who remind you of why you can't. This isn't about cutting people off with cold indifference. It's about choosing your circle intentionally. The Stoics weren't against love or friendship, they simply believed that we must choose wisely. A relationship that constantly triggers self-doubt, holds back your ambitions, or keeps you stuck in the past is not one built on virtue. As difficult as it may be, letting go of such ties can open the door to deeper, more meaningful connections. So, if you're feeling like your potential is being stifled, ask yourself, why am I still in this relationship? Is it truly helping me become who I aspire to be? If the answer is no, then maybe the most stoic, and most loving, thing you can do for yourself is to move forward, not out of anger, but out of self-respect and a commitment to your highest self. 2. Emotional chaos is a sign, not a sentence. What Stoicism teaches about toxic emotional cycles in relationships. Have you ever been in a relationship where negativity seems to dominate every interaction? Where conversations feel more like minefields than meaningful exchanges, and you walk away feeling drained rather than supported? If so, you're not alone. We often find ourselves stuck in emotional whirlwinds, anger, jealousy, resentment, and because we care about the person, we excuse the turmoil. But the Stoics would urge us to take a deeper look. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This principle lies at the heart of Stoic thinking. Emotions are natural. Even Stoics acknowledged their presence. But when a relationship consistently triggers negative emotional states and clouds your inner peace, it's time to ask a serious question. Is this relationship truly serving your well-being? Anger and jealousy are part of the human experience, but they shouldn't be the foundation of any connection. If someone's presence repeatedly brings out the worst in you, making you feel defensive, inadequate, or constantly misunderstood, it may not be a healthy bond. The Stoics believed in training the mind to respond wisely rather than react impulsively. That includes recognizing when certain relationships feed emotions that throw us off balance. The truth is, we can't control how other people behave, but we can control how long we choose to stay in environments that damage our peace. Stoicism teaches us that inner tranquility is something to be cultivated and protected. If you notice a pattern of emotional chaos with someone, whether it's a friend, a partner, or even a family member, that's not a fluke. It's a signal. And ignoring that signal doesn't make it disappear, it only extends your suffering. This doesn't mean you need to become cold or cut people off the moment things get tough. Conflict is part of life. But it does mean being honest with yourself. Are you constantly trying to fix the emotional landscape of the relationship while neglecting your own stability? Are you justifying behaviors that consistently harm your state of mind? A Stoic would tell you that it's noble to strive for compassion, but it's not virtuous to allow someone else's emotional volatility to dominate your inner world. You deserve relationships that help you regulate, not escalate, your emotional life. In the end, protecting your mental and emotional space is not selfish. It's an act of wisdom. As Marcus Aurelius might put it, the peace you're searching for isn't out there, it starts with choosing who you allow to enter your mind and heart. 3. Reclaiming your power. Stoic wisdom on breaking free from manipulation. Have you ever felt like you're losing control of your own life, not because of external chaos, but because someone close to you seems to be pulling the strings behind the scenes? Maybe it's subtle, constant guilt trips, emotional pressure, or being steered away from your goals. Or maybe it's more obvious, being told who to be, what to do, or how to think. No matter how it shows up, manipulation and control in a relationship are major red flags. And the Stoics would agree. If you are not the master of yourself, then you are not truly free. Epictetus, one of the great minds of Stoic philosophy, said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." That wisdom cuts deep. It reminds us that personal freedom isn't about doing whatever we want, it's about having the autonomy to live according to our values, to choose our path with clarity and purpose. When someone consistently undermines that autonomy, whether through dominance, guilt, or emotional games, it's not just inconvenient, it's corrosive. A relationship, romantic, familial, or platonic, should never make you feel like a puppet. It should feel like a partnership, rooted in mutual respect and trust. If you're constantly second-guessing your choices, silencing your voice, or suppressing your true self to maintain peace or avoid conflict, it's time to ask yourself, whose life am I really living? The Stoics didn't teach us to be passive in the face of adversity. They taught us to respond with reason, courage, and integrity. And that includes having the strength to recognize when a relationship has crossed the line from support to control. Manipulation thrives in silence and self-doubt. But self-awareness, the kind Stoicism encourages, exposes it. Taking back your power doesn't always mean an abrupt breakup or confrontation. Sometimes it starts with boundaries, clear, calm, and consistent ones. Other times, it means walking away entirely. Either way, it's about reclaiming the space to live in alignment with your own values, not someone else's agenda. It's not unkind to remove yourself from a dynamic that strips you of your autonomy. It's not selfish to choose freedom over control. In fact, as the Stoics would argue, it's the only path to a virtuous and meaningful life. You were not born to be someone's project, prisoner, or puppet. You were born to think, to grow, and to live as your truest self. So if you feel like someone else is writing your life script, take the pen back. The story you live should be authored by you. 4. When connection turns to chaos. A Stoic approach to emotionally draining relationships. Have you ever found yourself constantly exhausted after spending time with someone who's supposed to care about you? Like you're tiptoeing through every conversation, carefully choosing your words, trying not to set off another wave of conflict or passive aggression. If being around someone leaves you feeling more depleted than supported, that's not just an inconvenience, it's a serious sign something's wrong. And from a Stoic perspective, it's worth paying attention to. The Stoics taught that one of life's highest pursuits is tranquility, a calm, centered mind that isn't constantly disturbed by external events or people. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that peace is found within, but that doesn't mean tolerating constant emotional chaos for the sake of preserving a relationship. In fact, doing so can keep us from the very serenity Stoicism encourages. A relationship should feel like a place of refuge, not a battlefield. That doesn't mean it must be perfect or free of all disagreement. But it should never feel like walking on eggshells. If someone's presence adds more stress to your life than comfort, you owe it to yourself to reflect deeply. Why do I feel so tense around this person? Is this connection helping me grow, or is it draining my energy and clouding my clarity? The Stoics weren't about avoiding difficulty, they were about responding wisely to it. So they wouldn't tell you to run from every hard moment. But they would encourage you to distinguish between temporary tension and a consistent pattern of turmoil. If the latter is true, then continuing the relationship without change is not a sign of love or loyalty, it's a form of self-abandonment. This doesn't mean you have to shut the door on someone you care about. It could mean establishing firmer boundaries, having honest conversations, or even taking some distance to regain perspective. But sometimes, it does mean stepping away entirely. Not out of resentment, but out of a deeper commitment to your own well-being. Remember, relationships are meant to lift you up, not wear you down. They should be a source of emotional nourishment, not a chronic drain on your peace of mind. The Stoics believed that we must take full responsibility for the environments we allow ourselves to remain in. And that includes the emotional environments created by those closest to us. So if a relationship consistently leaves you feeling anxious, fatigued, or diminished, consider this: protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. In fact, it's one of the most Stoic choices you can make. 5. No respect, no relationship. Why mutual honor is non-negotiable in Stoic living. At the core of every strong, lasting relationship lies one essential element: mutual respect. Without it, everything else, love, loyalty, even shared history, starts to crumble. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where you're not being heard, where your thoughts, values, or boundaries are constantly dismissed? It may not be explosive, but it's quietly destructive. The Stoics would say that any connection lacking respect is fundamentally misaligned with a virtuous life. Respect isn't just about being polite, it's about recognizing the inherent dignity in yourself and in others. Seneca, a leading voice in Stoic philosophy, wrote extensively about the importance of living in harmony with others, but never at the cost of your own self-worth. If someone consistently undermines you, talks down to you, or treats your time and values as secondary, that's not love, it's disregard. And over time, that disregard erodes not just the relationship, but your own sense of self. Stoicism teaches us to act with reason, virtue, and integrity. It encourages us to engage in relationships that reflect those same principles. That means surrounding ourselves with people who see us not as tools to be used or obstacles to be managed, but as equals, worthy of respect, understanding, and honest communication. Some people might argue, but it's not that simple: I care about this person. And that's valid. Relationships are complex. Emotions run deep. But here's the hard truth. Caring about someone doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. The Stoics would urge you to take a rational step back. Look at the facts, not just the feelings. Are you honoring your own value by staying in a situation where your dignity is repeatedly overlooked? Mutual respect is the soil in which trust and love grow. Without it, you're building on sand. And the longer you remain in that shaky structure, the more it wears you down. A healthy relationship should allow both people to speak honestly, to disagree with maturity, and to grow alongside one another. It should never require one person to shrink so the other can feel taller. If you're facing a lack of respect in any relationship, romantic, familial, or otherwise, it's time to reflect. This isn't about cutting people off without compassion. It's about standing firm in your values. It's about saying, I value myself enough not to accept less than mutual dignity. In the Stoic view, self-respect isn't pride, it's principle. And expecting others to treat you with the same is not arrogance. It's alignment with virtue. So don't compromise your worth. A respectful life begins with the relationships you choose to nurture, or release. 6. Facing the truth. The Stoic case for letting go of illusions in relationships. Sometimes, what keeps us in a relationship isn't love, loyalty, or shared values, it's an illusion. Maybe it's the version of someone we hope they'll become, or the version of the relationship we wish existed. We cling to the highlight reel, ignore the red flags, and convince ourselves that with enough time or effort, everything will magically align. But as the Stoics teach, true peace begins when we accept things as they truly are, not as we want them to be. One of the core tenets of Stoicism is living in accordance with nature, that is, seeing reality clearly and embracing it without denial. Epictetus warned against the dangers of self-deception. When we choose to ignore truth and live in fantasies, we aren't just misleading ourselves, we're also postponing the inner growth and clarity that only truth can offer. Relationships grounded in illusion feel comforting at first. They offer hope and familiarity. But over time, they begin to drain us. You start feeling confused, questioning yourself, and suppressing your instincts. You may say things like, "But they used to be different," or, "They have so much potential." These thoughts may feel compassionate, but often they're just clever ways of avoiding the truth. The Stoics would challenge us to step back and ask, am I seeing this relationship for what it is, or what I want it to be? Are we ignoring patterns because we fear change more than we value truth? These are not easy questions, but they are essential. Because when we live tied to illusions, we're not engaging with the person in front of us, we're engaging with a story we've created. And no matter how well written that story is, it won't protect you from the disappointment that comes when reality inevitably breaks through. To live virtuously, as the Stoics emphasize, we must be willing to embrace the full, sometimes uncomfortable truth. That doesn't mean giving up on people too soon or expecting perfection. It means being honest about what is, so we can respond wisely and live freely. Clarity, not fantasy, is what sets us free. So if you find yourself clinging to a relationship more for its potential than its reality, it might be time to open your eyes, not to judgment, but to truth. That's where real connection, growth, and peace begin. As Stoicism reminds us, there's strength in letting go of illusions, and profound freedom in facing what's real. 7. When your values are on the line, the Stoic case for walking away. There comes a moment in certain relationships when you're faced with a quiet, uncomfortable question. Am I still living according to my values, or am I slowly giving them up for someone else? At first, the compromises may seem small, laughing off something that goes against your beliefs, avoiding topics that matter to you, or staying silent when your integrity is tested. But over time, these little sacrifices begin to chip away at who you are. And according to the Stoics, that's a cost too high to pay. Your values are not optional accessories, they are your compass, your anchor, your guide through life. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That clarity, that conviction, is at the heart of Stoic wisdom. A relationship that pressures you to abandon your principles, whether out of fear, guilt, or desire to keep the peace, is not love. It's a slow erosion of the self. The Stoics taught that a good life is one lived in alignment with virtue, courage, honesty, justice, and self-discipline. If being with someone means betraying those values, acting in ways that don't reflect who you truly are, it's not just an emotional problem. It's a philosophical one. You're being asked to trade your moral compass for momentary connection. And the Stoics would remind you, that's never worth it. It's important to distinguish between compromise and collapse. Healthy relationships involve compromise, meeting halfway, adapting, growing together. But if you feel like you're constantly minimizing your beliefs to fit someone else's mold, that's not growth. That's self-betrayal. The more you suppress your truth to preserve the relationship, the further you drift from a life of purpose. So ask yourself, is this relationship nurturing the person I strive to be? Or is it pulling me away from my core? It takes courage to be honest with that answer, especially when emotions are involved. But Stoicism is not about avoiding discomfort, it's about standing firm in what's right, even when it's hard. Leaving a relationship that conflicts with your values doesn't make you heartless. It makes you principled. It means you respect yourself enough to refuse a life that requires you to hide who you are. And that kind of integrity? That's the Stoic way. So hold your values close. Live them out boldly. And if a relationship demands that you sacrifice them, let that be your signal, not to fight harder to keep the connection, but to honor your truth and walk away with your head held high. 8. One-sided relationships. When giving without receiving becomes a wake-up call. Have you ever felt like you're the only one showing up in a relationship, constantly giving your time, your energy, your support, while the other person barely notices or reciprocates? At first, you tell yourself it's okay. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they don't know how to express appreciation. But eventually, that imbalance starts to wear you down. And if you listen closely, the Stoics would say, that's your inner wisdom calling you to reassess. Seneca once said, we should give as we would receive. Cheerfully, quickly, and without hesitation, for there is no grace in a benefit that sticks to the fingers. Giving is noble. Helping others is virtuous. But when generosity becomes one-sided, when you're constantly pouring from your cup and no one is refilling it, it becomes self-neglect, not virtue. Healthy relationships are built on reciprocity, a mutual exchange of care, effort, and emotional investment. That doesn't mean everything is perfectly 50-50 all the time. But there should be a sense of balance, a rhythm of give and take that sustains both people. When one person gives endlessly and the other only takes, it creates an emotional debt that builds resentment and burnout. The Stoics weren't about transactional relationships, but they did believe in mutual upliftment. A good relationship, in their view, should help both people grow in virtue. If you're giving your best to someone who only drains your energy, they're not just taking advantage of your kindness, they're preventing you from using your energy where it truly matters. So how do you know when you've crossed from compassion into overextension? Start by asking yourself, do I feel valued, heard, and appreciated in this relationship? Or do I feel invisible? If your efforts go unnoticed or are expected as a given, that's a red flag. The Stoic path is one of awareness and reason. It encourages you to observe patterns, reflect on intentions, and take action not based on emotion, but on principle. If someone consistently fails to meet you halfway, that's not a cue to try harder, it's a cue to reconsider how much of yourself you're giving away without return. You deserve relationships that energize, not exhaust you, connections where support is mutual, respect is shared, and giving flows both ways. It's not selfish to expect reciprocity, it's wise. Because when you honor your own worth, you create space for relationships that are truly enriching. So if you're always the giver, it might be time to give something to yourself. The permission to step back and demand better. That, the Stoics would say, is not weakness, it's self-respect. 9. Abuse is never acceptable. A Stoic stand for self-respect and safety. Some topics are hard to talk about, but that doesn't make them any less important. Abuse, in any form, whether physical, emotional, verbal, or psychological, is never justified. It doesn't matter how long you've known someone, how much history you share, or how deeply you once cared. The Stoics, who valued dignity, virtue, and inner peace above all, would be clear on this point: no relationship that diminishes your humanity is worth keeping. Stoicism teaches us that every human being possesses inherent worth and dignity. Epictetus, who once lived as a slave, understood better than most that external circumstances may be beyond our control, but our response to them is our responsibility. And when we are in a relationship where we are being harmed, mentally, emotionally, or physically, the most virtuous and rational response is to remove ourselves from that environment. Abuse is not simply a rough patch or a communication issue. It's a violation. It erodes your sense of self, instills fear, and chips away at your confidence and joy. The Stoics would not ask you to tolerate this. They would tell you to honor your self-worth, to protect your peace, and to act with courage and clarity. Leaving an abusive relationship is not easy. It can be terrifying, especially when manipulation, isolation, or dependency are involved. But Stoicism is not about taking the easy path, it's about taking the right one, even when it's painful. Seeking help, whether from friends, family, or professional support systems, is not weakness. It is one of the most stoic things you can do, recognizing what is within your control and taking action to reclaim your life. Moreover, Stoicism encourages healing, not just escape. It teaches that while we cannot undo the past, we can choose how to respond going forward. You are not broken because someone tried to break you. You are not unworthy because someone failed to see your value. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength begins with the decision to protect your body, your mind, and your soul from further harm. The decision to say, enough. If you are in an abusive relationship, remember. It's not your fault. You are not alone. And you are not without options. Choosing to leave, to seek safety, and to rebuild is not just survival, it is a courageous, stoic act of self-respect and virtue. You deserve peace. You deserve dignity. You deserve to live a life free from fear, and full of meaning. 10. When words no longer work. Stoic wisdom for navigating failed communication. Have you ever tried to express yourself in a relationship, only to feel like you're talking to a wall? Like no matter how many times you speak, nothing seems to land, nothing really changes. Over time, failed communication becomes more than just a frustrating pattern, it becomes a sign of deeper misalignment. According to the Stoics, when mutual understanding disappears, it's time to reflect, not only on what's being said, but on what's no longer possible. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, believed in clarity of thought and action. He wrote often about approaching life, and others, with reason, patience, and compassion. But even he understood that harmony can't exist without dialogue. Communication is the bridge between two souls, and when that bridge crumbles, all that's left is misunderstanding, resentment, and distance. In a healthy relationship, conversations are not battles to be won but spaces for connection and growth. But when every attempt at clarity ends in confusion, or worse, conflict, it's worth asking, is this still a relationship? Or just a cycle of noise? The Stoics emphasized self-awareness and responsibility. That means reflecting on your own role in communication breakdowns. Are you truly listening? Are you expressing yourself clearly and calmly? But it also means recognizing when the other person is unwilling or unable to meet you halfway. Relationships require effort from both sides. If one person is always trying while the other shuts down or shuts out, something is deeply unbalanced. Sometimes, improving communication is possible, with honesty, patience, and a willingness to grow. But other times, the breakdown is a symptom of something more serious, a fundamental disconnect in values, priorities, or emotional availability. When that's the case, pushing forward might only create more frustration and pain. Stoicism doesn't ask us to fight endlessly for what's not working. It asks us to act with wisdom and virtue, to choose what serves peace, clarity, and alignment with our higher self. And sometimes, that means stepping back. Not out of anger, but out of respect, for yourself and for the limits of the relationship. You deserve to be in connections where your voice is heard, your heart is understood, and your thoughts are received with respect. When that is missing, consistently and without repair, it may be time to let go, not because you didn't care, but because you care enough to stop losing yourself in the silence. In the Stoic view, communication is more than words, it's the foundation of trust. When that foundation collapses, the path forward may not be to speak louder, but to walk away with quiet dignity. 11. When peace becomes the price, a Stoic reflection on inner calm and relationships. What happens when a relationship, something meant to bring warmth, connection, and support, starts to rob you of your peace. When simply being around someone feels like emotional turbulence, and your once steady mind becomes clouded with stress, overthinking, and unease? According to Stoic philosophy, this isn't something to ignore. Inner peace isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. The Stoics placed immense value on tranquility, a state of calmness rooted not in what happens around us, but in how we respond to it. Epictetus taught that we should guard our inner state as our most sacred possession. So when a relationship repeatedly disturbs that state, when it feels more like a storm than a sanctuary, it's a signal to pause and reflect. Of course, no relationship is without challenges. Difficult conversations, emotional ups and downs, and occasional tension are all part of being human. But if the connection consistently leaves you feeling anxious, drained, or unsettled, it may not be a temporary rough patch, it might be a fundamental misalignment. Stoicism doesn't tell us to run at the first sign of discomfort. It asks us to look deeper. Why does this person disturb my peace? Is it their behavior, our unresolved issues, or my own unrealistic expectations? Through honest self-reflection, we begin to separate what we can control from what we cannot. Sometimes, solutions lie in setting boundaries, improving communication, or adjusting perspectives. But other times, the clearest path is the hardest one, stepping away. Not because you failed. Not because you're giving up. But because you've realized that any connection that demands you sacrifice your mental clarity and emotional well-being is too high a price to pay. The Stoics would remind us that the people we surround ourselves with shape our internal world. If someone's presence consistently brings emotional volatility, then protecting your peace becomes a matter of principle, not preference. You have one mind, one life, and it deserves to be lived in alignment with serenity, not spent battling constant unrest. Letting go of a relationship that disrupts your inner calm isn't cold, it's courageous. It's a declaration that you value your well-being, your growth, and your ability to remain centered in a chaotic world. So ask yourself, does this relationship help me stay grounded, or does it pull me into chaos? If it's the latter, the most stoic thing you can do might just be the hardest: walk away, not in anger, but in quiet pursuit of your peace. Because at the end of the day, a life of virtue begins not in the noise around you, but in the stillness within.